Good morning. So jumping off of my last video, which was talking about how a character's internal monologue reflect Irish wolfhounds, squeaky toys, um, reflect the outside narrative and where they are in the story and where the author puts them in the story, but also kind of like how the relationships build. I wanted to talk about another example because I think it's a really powerful one, and I really love this book series. So I'm gonna fangirl for a little bit because it's amazing. This is the Daevabad Trilogy by S.A. Chakraborty. It's honestly one of the most beautifully and elegantly crafted trilogies I've ever read. They're absolutely incredible. The world building is astounding. The tapestry of history and mythology and art and religion and politics is it's so intricate, so detailed, and yet so magical in a way that like you feel like you know every piece of this world. You would recognize the rocks, you would recognize the nuances that only a native would feel in a world, but you also don't get bogged down. It doesn't feel like you have to have a huge learning curve outside of the learning curve that the characters experience. The sun is coming through the fog now. Whew, I can't see. And it's genuinely an exquisite piece. I'm gonna try and hang on. There we go. I'm sorry, Dog. Okay. My dog can still see out the window, and I can actually see. So we're gonna go with this. What was I saying? Oh yeah, so it's really an exquisite story. Just in general, I love it so much. I've read it many times in the last year and a half since I found it. It's incredible. I learn something new every time I write or read this book or this series, and it's amazing. Anyway, in a nutshell, the story is set in the Middle East. It starts in Egypt, in Cairo, and the main character, Nahri, is a streetwise like thief chick, and she winds up being swept off into another city in the Middle East that is a mythical city of genies, or jinn is what they call it in the book. And she discovers magic. She discovers her heritage within this city and all the political upheaval and all the things, and it's great. And so so she's one of the narrators. You know from the start that she is meant to be the hero, and she's a little orphan girl, basically, who was raised in the human world and suddenly realizes that she's an important figure in a magical world that she does not know the rules. And one of the things that I love about this particular choice is she knows all the human rules. She knows how to play the system and survive in the human world. And then suddenly this girl who survives on her wits, on her understanding of the system, on her ability to read people, is suddenly thrown into a world that doesn't play by the same rules. And she has to suddenly gain a new set of skills. She needs to just kind of find her feet and find a way to master her situation and survive as well. So it's a really interesting place to put your character, where they're already very adept at something and thrown into a situation that theoretically they would be adept at, but they don't have the skills for it. And so it's an interesting way to build the world, because suddenly you see the similarities between the human world and the jinn world, but you also see the differences. So it's a very elegant way to build this world, and help us understand the difference between the two. But she also it's curious because she now needs to find a way to level up quickly so that she can survive. And because she has the inherent skill set to do that, she knows herself, she knows how to play a game, she knows that there is a game, she just needs a few more pieces. It gives her an interesting path forward in through the players that she runs into in this new world. Along the way, she meets a very powerful djinn who's exceptionally old. He is a figure of great standing and polarizing opinion, let's put it that way. And he's a djinn, and his name is Dada. And they start this adventure together. And then she also runs into the prince, Ali Khatani. And he is also a djinn, and he is also a polarizing personality. It's really quite funny. But what I love about this and why I'm mentioning all three of them is they are the three main narrators in these series. So she uses each of these characters to highlight different parts of the story. And as we're doing this, she can tell different sides of the story instead of just sticking with, okay, this is our vehicle into the story. Now she has three. So this really beautifully illustrates what I was saying about the internal monologue and where the character thinks they are and the role they think they play versus the role they actually play in the story. So, cat hair, did you see that? And the kitty, she came out. Are you gonna come sit on me? No? Okay. So, what I love about this is you have a character, let's take Nahri. So she is an orphan girl and a thief at the beginning of the novel, and then she winds up, being transported into a new world where she is not the orphan daughter, thief person that she thought she was. And so she has to, that's a very jarring internal versus external relationship between the narratives, right? So she has to really work out, like, this is who I have been my whole life, this is how I've survived my whole life, this is how I think about myself, and now I'm this person, and there are a lot more expectations on me, and how do I do this, how do I navigate this? And throughout the novel, she winds up accepting like different levels of this standing, like different aspects of her role within the novel and in the society. But what I love about it is she still makes choices that don't make sense in her world because she's inherently the little girl in Cairo who is a thief. And so she's basically playing a different game than everybody around her. And because she knows who she is, and because this part of her doesn't die, essentially, kind of like Neil Caffrey's Innocence, there is an undercurrent of uncertainty that she builds into every relationship that she has, because everybody else is like, her motives are different. Like, what do we do with this person? And so it creates a really interesting hero's journey, because the narratives, I can't say this is really, the narratives, both internally for her and externally, are so vastly different. And even as they continue to like get closer together so that there is a little bit more of a unity there, because she has to function in this world, there's still some friction, there's still some unpredictability, and there's still, like, if you're looking back on it, you go, oh yeah, should have seen that one coming. And in fact, you actually have the other narrators go, I forgot who she was. yeah, that's why that exploded. And I love that, because you have a built-in magnifying glass for how the power of knowing your internal story versus the external, because we all live in an external world. We all, as authors, have to write the story that we're writing, right? But each of us has an internal, so we as authors, we know why we want to write this story. We know who we are, we know what inspired us, and it doesn't matter what everybody else is saying about what we've written. We know why we did it, we know why we made that choice, and right or wrong, it is what it is, right? So I think it's a really beautiful way to look at basically how we interact as humans. When I have a piece of my story, I know my story best, and yes, sometimes I can get a little too close to it and I don't see the possibility of me stepping out into a different role. But that's why I live in a world where everybody else is like, man, you'd be really great at X, Y, and Z. And it opens up the possibility that, you know, I'm not calcified in my story, but it is my foundation. And I can move past it and I can build on it, but I also know where I came from, you know? And I think that is one of the most beautiful things about this story that she wrote, was every single character has a very firm understanding of who they are, what their values are, where they come from, and everybody has an opinion about it. And it's a story of working out what role do you want to have in this world, and what path are you going to walk based on who you know you are. And she does that with each of her characters. So this one was, I think I'm going to do a different video on the other characters, because they bring out different nuances, I think, to, so Nahri's was the hero. She is, like, we know that she's the hero. She's going to be the one that the main person that we're walking through the story with. And she does embrace, well, somebody's got to do it, and here I am, so here we go. And her perception of herself and how she can accomplish this is what's interesting, because it's not just, am I worthy of being the hero? It's, how am I going to accomplish this without losing who I am? And how am I going to accomplish this without losing what I want in life? And I think that's something that I personally am working to master, is I know how to survive. I keep doing it. But how do I stay myself, survive, and do something that I want, achieve something that I want, pursue my own dreams in a way that is me? And I think that is less explored in books than I would expect. So anyway, another insight into a book and stories and stuff from RJ, and I will talk to you guys later.